Picture two adult siblings sitting in the same living room at Thanksgiving. They grew up under the same roof. They fought over the TV remote. They shared the back seat on long family road trips. They knew which floorboard creaked outside their parents' bedroom. They knew who the other one had a crush on, which teacher they hated, what cereal they ate before school, and exactly what kind of mood Dad was in, just by the way he closed the front door. There was a time when they knew almost everything about each other. Now they talk like acquaintances. How's work? Good. How are the kids? Busy. They talk about traffic, home repairs, someone's cholesterol, maybe football, and carefully avoid everything that actually matters. One of them may not even know what the other has really been going through for the last 5 years. Which raises a strange question. How can someone who appears in nearly every one of your earliest memories eventually know so little about the person you became? We usually assume something dramatic must have happened. A betrayal, a terrible argument, money, politics, a spouse who came between them. And sometimes that is exactly what happened. But some sibling relationships don't end with an explosion, they erode. A missed phone call here, a resentment that never gets named, a joke that stops being funny, a holiday skipped, a moment when someone needed help and the other person wasn't there. Nothing seems serious enough to confront until years later the relationship is almost gone. And for many American Gen X siblings, there's another layer to this story. A lot of them grew up in a culture that placed a high value on independence. Many came home from school to empty houses, handled problems without much adult supervision, wandered neighborhoods until dinner, settled arguments themselves, and learned that being capable often meant not needing much from anyone. That could build real confidence, but it could also teach a quieter lesson. Handle it yourself. Don't make a big deal out of things. You'll get over it. So the real question may not be, why did these siblings stop being close? It may be, were they ever taught how to stay close once living in the same house was no longer doing the work for them? Because childhood closeness is unusual. You don't necessarily choose it. Your sibling is simply there. At breakfast, in the hallway, in the car, at grandma's house, on vacation. During your parents' arguments, when you get grounded, when your first relationship falls apart, you can spend thousands of hours with someone without ever intentionally maintaining the relationship. Then adulthood arrives. One moves to Arizona, the other stays in Ohio. There are jobs, marriages, divorces, kids, aging parents, mortgages, illnesses, careers. Suddenly, being siblings is no longer enough to guarantee contact. Now, somebody has to call, somebody has to ask. Somebody has to say, "You seemed different last time I saw you. Are you okay?" And those are completely different skills from sharing a bedroom. But distance often becomes more complicated because siblings may have grown up in the same house without actually having the same childhood. Imagine two brothers talking about their parents. One says, "We had a pretty good childhood," and the other goes quiet. Because what the younger brother remembers as a stable home, the older brother remembers very differently. Maybe he was the one distracting the younger kids during arguments. Maybe he knew when money was tight. Maybe he was expected to be responsible. Maybe he became the unofficial babysitter before he was old enough to understand why. Same parents, same address, different childhood. Memory is not a security camera. We remember events through our age, temperament, responsibilities, relationships, fears, and the meaning those events had for us. So when one sibling says, "Mom wasn't that bad," the other may hear something completely different. Not disagreement, erasure. "You didn't see what I saw. You weren't treated the way I was. You got to be a kid. I didn't." And those differences rarely stay in the past. Families also assign roles. There's the responsible one, the rebel, the funny one, the successful one, the dramatic one, the one who never causes trouble. The family may have created those labels when everyone was 16, but 30 years later, the labels can still be waiting at the dinner table. You may run a company, raise 3 children, and manage a complicated adult life. Then your brother makes one joke about how you've always been irresponsible. And suddenly you're 17 again. That is one reason sibling relationships can feel emotionally intense in ways that make no sense from the outside. Your sibling doesn't just know you, they know older versions of you. And sometimes they keep interacting with those versions long after you've changed. You may have spent 20 years becoming someone different, only to walk into your childhood home and feel your personality snap back into its old position within 20 minutes. The confident executive starts defending himself. The independent woman starts competing with her sister. The calm adult suddenly needs dad's approval again. And this is where distance can begin to feel like relief. Not necessarily because you hate your sibling, but because being around them makes you feel like someone you worked very hard to stop being. There's another possibility, though. Sometimes what looks like independence is genuine autonomy, and sometimes it is the habit of never asking. Two siblings can miss each other for 10 years and still never call. One thinks, if she wanted a relationship, she'd reach out. The other thinks exactly the same thing. Neither person feels indifferent, both are waiting. But if you learned early that needing people makes you vulnerable, reaching out can feel strangely risky. Because a phone call contains a question you may not want answered. Do you miss me too? So silence becomes safer. Then small injuries accumulate. Maybe your sister wasn't there during your divorce. Maybe your brother barely helped when your mother got sick. Maybe you always hosted Thanksgiving and nobody seemed to notice the work. Maybe one sibling received financial help from your parents while you were expected to figure things out alone. Maybe there were jokes that everyone called harmless, but you stopped finding them harmless 20 years ago. Nobody says anything. Christmas comes. Everyone is polite. Another year passes. One call goes unanswered, then another. 5 years later, both siblings have developed completely different explanations for who abandoned whom. This is how some relationships disappear without ever officially ending. There was no final conversation, just less. Less honesty, less effort, less curiosity, less willingness to risk an uncomfortable moment. Until distance becomes normal. But distance itself doesn't tell you whether something healthy or unhealthy has happened. For some people, less contact is a necessary boundary. If every interaction includes humiliation, manipulation, cruelty, or repeated disrespect, stepping away may be the healthiest choice available. Nobody is obligated to maintain intimacy simply because they share DNA. But for someone else, the relief of distance may come from something very different. They feel better because they no longer have to confront the conversation they've been avoiding. Both people experience relief, but one is protecting a boundary. The other may be protecting an unresolved fear. From the outside, they can look identical. So perhaps the more useful question isn't, should I reconnect with my sibling? It's, what happens inside me when I imagine being around them? Do you feel unsafe, resentful, invisible, ashamed, responsible for everyone? Do you immediately want their approval? Do you become defensive before they've even said anything? That reaction may tell you more than the number of years since your last phone call, because siblings occupy a strange position in our lives. They can become almost complete strangers while still knowing things about us that nobody else knows. Your brother may find out through Facebook that you changed jobs. Your sister may learn from someone else that you became a grandparent. And yet she may still remember exactly what you did when you were scared at age 9. She remembers the nickname nobody uses anymore, the dog you cried over, the summer your parents almost separated, the night the power went out and you both slept in the living room. Your spouse may know the adult you better. Your friends may understand your current life better. But your sibling carries evidence of people you used to be. And maybe that's why sibling distance can feel so strange. You are not just losing contact with a person. You are losing contact with a witness. Someone who remembers a world that no longer exists. So, go back to that Thanksgiving living room. Two siblings sitting 10 feet apart, talking politely, avoiding the past, avoiding the present. They may look like strangers, but they're not exactly strangers. They are two people carrying enormous amounts of shared history with almost no shared language for what that history means now. And perhaps that is the real tragedy in some sibling relationships. Not that they stopped loving each other, not even that they changed, but that they kept updating themselves while never updating their understanding of each other. So, if you have a sibling you barely know anymore, the question may not be whether you miss the person they are today. You may not even know that person. The harder question is this: do you miss who they used to be? Or do you miss the possibility that one day they might finally see who you became? Because sharing a childhood can make someone part of your history. It cannot guarantee that they remain part of your life. And sometimes the strangest thing about becoming strangers isn't how far apart two siblings traveled. It's realizing they may have started telling different stories about the same childhood long before either of them noticed the distance. If this made you think about your own family differently, share what you recognized in the comments and subscribe for more explorations of the psychology behind the relationships we think we understand.